Many folks do not realize the importance of Jungle Trail in our history and in Indian River County's future. We're coming up on the centennial of Jungle Trail. It's 97 years old today, and we have families that live along that trail that were there at the very beginning.
My husband was Joseph W. Michael, who grew up here. His father came at the age of 10 with his parents and siblings in 1887. At this point in history, there were probably no more than 5, possibly 6 families living within a 5 to 6 mile radius. What became Jungle Trail was the easiest way for one family to get to another family to visit. They of course went by foot and they went by horse, and they may have gone by buggy, and they probably used a wagon now and then. And then later, as their trips were more frequent, there became a little dirt trail, which eventually became a wider dirt trail. This little dirt trail became known as Jungle Trail. Jungle Trail was drastically different. The area was drastically different. Life was drastically different. There was nothing here except a lot of mosquitoes, a great quantity of fish in the river, and turtles at the ocean. It was old Florida. The people who lived here were definitely pioneers in the most intense sense of the word pioneers. As the county grew, the area grew, of course. More people, for different reasons, were using Jungle Trail. It would not be terribly unusual to see some residents, some tourists, some citrus people using Jungle Trail all in the same day.
A lot of people do not realize how we have such a bit of old Florida so close to our population centers, but everyone seems to enjoy Jungle Trail and its natural beauty.
Our brewery is called Orchid Island Brewery. That's the landmass that we're on that stretches from Sebastian Inlet to Round Island. Jungle Trail is one of the names that we picked for one of our beers. Jungle Trail is a very special place to us. And one of the neat things about Jungle Trail that inspired this beer was that before there was houses here, there was citrus groves. And Jungle Trail was used to take the fruit off of the island. And it's just a really special beer to us, and we're proud to have named it Jungle Trail. One of the first ideas that always occurs when we have people that we care about coming into town is driving them up and down Jungle Trail. It's such a neat experience.
My cousin and I grew up here all of our lives, and that was the only way we could actually get up to the inlet. We'd go over to the Wabasso Beach and swim, and then we'd come back along Jungle Trail there, and there were some springs and stuff, and we'd use those to rinse off before we went home. Then we didn't have to use so much water at the house.
I have a lot of early memories from Jungle Trail. Driving up to the inlet with my dad, and you would go on Jungle Trail, and then you would get out on where A1A is now, and we'd always get stuck 2 or 3 times going back and forth, but they'd always manage to dig you out and you'd get going again. But you know, there was no A1A there then, so it was like an adventure when you went on that road, because it curved around so much, you know, and there was so much like vegetation and you know, old oak trees with big orchids and stuff growing in there, and it was just a neat trip. And that was a special trip because it took a long time back in that day to get from our house up to the inlet.
There were a lot of fishing shacks, and there was a treasure house that they used to sell things there and that, and we used to go down there, and Milton Jones was a good friend of my dad's and my uncle's. And we'd go down there and visit him and his wife, and his mother lived there also on the same property.
Of the many people who lived along the trail at the very beginning, Jones's Pier and Richard Jones stands out in everybody's memory. Richard grew all sorts of vegetables and sold them at Jones's Pier. He also docked many boats there, and people enjoyed coming and just sitting and talking to Richard about the history of the area, and he could tell some pretty tall tales too.
He had big groves in the back of his house, and he would go out there, and boats would pull up just like they did for the citrus houses and that along US 1. The boats would pull up and they'd buy their fruit from him out there on that dock, and then move on down the river and go to Miami or Fort Lauderdale or whatever, and a lot of those boats were big yacht type things. And he also charged, I think it was 25 cents or 50 cents for us for some people who didn't have access to the water to go fishing on his dock.
In 1964, there was really very little on Jungle Trail. There was Mr. Jones and his fruit stand and his house and his dock and his grove. And
Every time I had clients, I would take them there, and Mary was swinging in the little front porch, and he would come right out and then show them all the, mangoes, avocados, grapefruit, like red grapefruit, and he would cut them up to taste them, and then we would all buy bags of them, and I would that was part of my tour when I was showing property in Vero many years ago. It was fun. It was like really old Florida.
most of the community, Mr. Jones and his fruit and his dock were pretty famous.
Some of my earliest memories of Jungle Trail were when Old Man Jones was still operating. I think he operated the house here in his grove stand and the dock here all the way into his 80s. And when I was growing up, my family and I and family friends would spend a lot of time right here on the river. In fact, this water right here out in front of us is where I first learned how to water ski. I always remember Old Man Jones right here on this pier. He would open his doors to anybody who was driving through, and he would sit down and just talk about whatever anybody wanted to talk about.
Me and Mr. Jones, I'll never forget it. He was one interesting man, and many times my former deceased wife now and I have ridden this Jungle Trail and stopped and had wonderful encounters with Mr. Jones. And he just seemed to be so caring. I remember one thing about, I was really amused how he put out the water for the dogs. He always had a jug of water out there, and they can fill a pan for all the people walking dogs down here. But there's no doubt about he was a lovable character, but I'll never forget talking to Mr. Jones on Jungle Trail.
There's many aspects of Jungle Trail, and one of them, one that's very important, is the fact that it is an entry to our first National Wildlife Refuge. That's Pelican Island.
So Pelican Island National Wildlife Refuge was the first refuge established in the National Wildlife Refuge system. It was established actually by Teddy Roosevelt back in 1903. And as you take a tour of Pelican Island, you can see this history clearly. When you walk through Centennial Trail, you get to a point on our observation deck where every refuge is etched in the deck, in the planks leading up to the deck itself. The deck itself then overlooks Pelican Island, so you get the full experience. There are at any time during the season, during the height of the birding season, which is the winter season, over 1,000 birds will find their way to Pelican Island. Over 30 bird species will nest there. It's critical for these birds to have the sanctuary in place, and it's right here in Indian River Lagoon at Pelican Island National Wildlife Refuge.
Jungle Trail is really important to our conservation efforts because we have many conservation areas right along Jungle Trail that are linked by the trail itself. And the history of the trail and the working waterfront and all those aspects are really important to these conservation areas because we really are trying to link the history of Indian River County with the ecology in our restoration efforts. One of our main missions is to try and work with the schools and other educational groups to try and make sure that the future generations understand the significance of the trail. So the county is really excited, we're all engaged, and we look forward to what opportunities we can put out there for the public in the future.
There was a time about 30 years ago when we all had to band together, all the nonprofits, the historical societies, and the preservation groups had to band together to save Jungle Trail. And one of those groups was the Pelican Island Preservation Society, which has done a wonderful job helping us preserve and protect and promote Pelican Island.
Well, Pelican Island Preservation Society is I'm president of that group, and we basically just try to help the refuge up there with certain things. We raise money and help them up there on the refuge itself.
Jungle Trail is listed on the National Register, and that is very hard to come by. There's very few roads in the United States that are on that register. That is one of the reasons Jungle Trail is so important to our tourism and the people visiting our county.
Jungle Trail has played an important role in the history of Indian River County for years. It was important to citrus growers, also to our local fishermen. It was the lifeblood of our economy back in the 20s and 30s. So fast forwarding to present, now it takes on a new important role, and that role is tourism and recreation. It's off the beaten path location, makes it the perfect spot for biking, hiking, fishing. Jungle Trail is a great way for our visitors to explore what old Florida was. There's so few sites that actually exist to this day, and it's important that we have one right here in Indian River County.
Over the years, we've had to protect Jungle Trail from developers and different folks who wanted it abandoned. We all felt that it was a part of old Florida that should be saved. And the Indian River County has always cooperated with us because it is a county road and has always been a county road. Just recently, Indian River County erected new signage. We're very excited about the new signage. We feel that after 97 years, Jungle Trail needs to be recognized as a special place in Indian River County.
When the term Jungle Trail comes into my mind, it immediately takes me back to early Florida history, and more particularly to early Indian River County history. Not only do my children and grandchildren deserve to keep Jungle Trail in their lives ahead, but everyone else's do as well. Residents, visitors, everyone.
Being originally from Vero and from Florida, I'm a Florida native, I've gotten around to see a whole lot of the state, and within my lifetime I've seen a lot of change along the way. And fortunately, Jungle Trail is still one of those spots in Florida that resembles a glimmer into the past of what old Florida used to be. This is truly one of our natural treasures that we need to protect. I knew very early on that this was a very special place, not just geographically because of how pretty it is around here, but it's had such a major impact on who our community has become. And I think it's important for us to stop and recognize why we need to protect it. It's a very special place, and protect it into the future for more generations to experience it.
Pelican Island and Jungle Trail will be established and around for many generations to come, so that not only do we get to share in the experience of Jungle Trail and Pelican Island, but future generations do as well. Jungle Trail and Pelican Island are part of our history and part of who we are as a community.
Jungle Trail is really it's a great thing for all of us to have known, and thank goodness that the Historical Society and people like that knew that back in the old days that we needed to preserve and protect that road and keep it as it is. So we're very lucky that has happened all of our lives.
The Jungle Trail will always mean a lot to me. It's very unique. There's not many places like it left in this world.
As the Director of Tourism for Indian River County, I'm so proud to see how our community has grown and our businesses have grown and flourished. But it's so important to preserve these historical sites that are so important to our community.
Jungle Trail is a little bit of old Florida still with us, and we expect and hope that future generations will enjoy it as much as we have.